Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mysterious Huntsman Show. Tonight's guest is one of the most respected voices in UFO and paranormal research. Since 1986, Preston Dennett has investigated hundreds of eyewitness accounts after discovering that people close to him were experiencing unexplained phenomena of their own. He is a longtime MUFON field investigator. He's a paranormal researcher and the best-selling author of more than 30 books and over 100 articles exploring UFOs, ghosts, and high strangeness. His work has been featured in publications around the world, and he's appeared on programs including Coast to Coast AM, Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert, and the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, UFO Hunters, and Deep Sea UFOs. Please join me tonight in welcoming Preston Dennett to the show. Hey, Preston, how are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and just talk about, all things of high strangeness, particularly the UFO thing. I don't know if you're like a UFO guy or have you turned into a UAP guy or really what's going on?
I'm old school. Yeah, UFO. I don't
Yes.
like the term UAP. I think it's a distraction. I can call myself a ufologist. I'm not going to call myself a U-apologist. So
that's a good one. Yeah.
I don't like the sound of it. I don't know why.
I don't either. And I too am old school. I'm going to stick with UFO. And I was speaking a few months ago with Jim Peniston, and he's also a old school UFO guy. And he also thinks a lot of this going on is a distraction. And I mean, that might be a very good place to start at this point. What are your thoughts on all of this unveiling by the government and the drops and everything? Doesn't it seem a little too weird?
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I'm a bit on the fence about it, but mostly on one side of the fence. I mean, it's good in the fact that there's movement towards disclosure because there's been nothing. Nobody talking. It's all denials. This doesn't exist. If you think you saw UFOs, you're crazy. It's hoaxes, hallucinations, misperceptions, mental illness, your imagination. But now we definitely have steps in the right direction. But I still feel like the cover-up is firmly in place because while we've had 3 major file drops, there's nothing that's really explosive in there. The footage that's coming out it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed because I know they have much, much better. And really, we have better in the public arena. The Camburgas turkey footage, the Dome on the Rock footage.
Yes.
The Mexico City footage of 1991. And, those are just a few. Salida, Colorado. I can name others that I think are better than anything that they've shown us. And they're not showing us what we know they have, which is the Edwards Air Force Base footage that was referenced by Gordon Cooper.
Yes.
Or, also like the Malmstrom incident. That had to be photographed, 1967 in Montana.
Yep.
So, yeah, I feel like they basically were forced to play their hand to some degree, because if they don't make steps towards disclosure, they're becoming a laughingstock. Irrelevant, not credible, and that's, in fact, where they're at, and I have this much pity, that much, for them, because they've dug their own grave. So,
for sure.
That's kind of my assessment at this point. I hope there's another file drop that they show us the Roswell craft and the bodies. That's the end game to me. Full truth and transparency and nothing less. And I don't think we'll ever get that.
No, I agree. I don't think we will either. And I was going to mention, I saw the Spielberg's Disclosure Day movie. I was super excited about it because Close Encounters back in the 70s set me off. But this was nothing like that. It was, to me, I was disappointed, and it almost seemed rushed as well. And it seemed like they had to put something out. And I don't really know what was going on with that. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it just felt rushed.
Yeah, I haven't seen it actually, but I've certainly seen all the previews. I basically know what it's about. And that's what I'm hearing, that, it's good for people who've never perhaps been introduced to this field in any depth. But a lot of contactees I've talked to were like, some are like, wow, that was actually pretty good. And some are like, it was too Hollywoodized. It's very dramatic. I mean, I know there's some good elements of truth in there in terms of people becoming psychic after an encounter. Of course, the government conspiracy, the cover-up. We know that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He definitely did his homework, or someone did. There was a lot in there that it's just wrapped in the whole lore. I mean, there was a lot in there. So I was impressed with that. But like you said earlier, at least we're moving forward. Somebody's doing something. I mean, I never thought in my lifetime I would hear congressional hearings or
Yeah.
the term non-human intelligence. I think we're getting closer, but it seems like it's stalled a little bit to me. But no, I appreciate your take. I wanted to get your take on that for sure.
Yeah, I'm impatient. I want, the whole 9 yards. Give, there's the term catastrophic disclosure. If we
Yeah.
disclose too much, it's going to cause a collapse of society. I think we're looking at catastrophic non-disclosure.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's the lies and the cover-up that is really causing huge problems in our society. So yeah, lay it all out.
Yeah.
Let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. It's like we already know that they cover this stuff up, and now people are smarter than they give them credit for. And now that's causing a whole problem. That's going to cause even more either division or more distrust of the government.
Exactly. Governments rise and fall, and when they become top heavy with greed and corruption, that leads to their downfall. So, we've had a good run here. We've had 250 years, which is pretty good for a government. There's revolutions usually come around at some point. So I hope we can push through that and just get some real truth and honesty.
I do. I same here. I hope so. It feels like it's just we're on a thin edge here, and it's about to break.
Yeah, and it's connected to the whole UFO subject, among other things, of course. But this is a vital part of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I'm gonna back up a little bit. I mean, how did you get started in this? And I know a lot of people know your story, but I'd like to hear some of your personal accounts. Like you started hearing about this through family and friends a long time ago, but how did you really get involved in this whole topic?
I was dragged in, kicking and screaming, and involuntarily, in a way.
Boy.
I'm being only partly facetious, really, because I was a diehard skeptic. I didn't want to hear about UFOs because I was pretty scientifically based, and I know how far away the stars are. And certainly with our own technology and understanding of physics, there's just no way we could be visited. It's not scientifically possible. I'll put that in quotes now, because obviously we are being visited, and you'd be a fool not to recognize how many accounts there are. So that's what's my mindset. Like, no, there's nothing to it. And I realize now, of course, that I bought into the whole Blue Book party line, Project Blue Book. Hoaxes, hallucinations, misperceptions, nothing to it. And even when my brother came running into the house, my older brother Mark, I was 13 years old, 1978, thereabout. And he's like, I saw a UFO. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Because even back then, I was really into astronomy. And 1986 is when it all kind of changed for me. I'm going through college. I'm 21 years old. I'm really into science at this point, biology and anthropology and astronomy and meteorology. And I'm just, that was to me something you could sink your teeth into and trust. Of course, I realized, no, you actually can't, because they were lying too. But either way, what happened was November 17, 1986, Captain Kenju Chirochi is flying JAL Airlines over Alaska and sees a UFO, he and his crew. It's a very famous case. It's very well verified. They've got radar, multiple witnesses. It went on for almost an hour. Of course, none of that was on the news report that I'm looking at. They basically made fun of this guy. Right. I remember thinking, oh, that poor pilot. And in my head, I'm thinking, he saw a reflection off the ice cap, which is so ridiculous. Or he's lying. He's a commercial pilot. I did think to myself, well, he's going to lose his job over this. And I was right about that. He was grounded for some time. But it interested me. And that's when I remembered my brother had seen a UFO. And I'm like, oh, I'll ask him again. Because I never did. I never really asked him. And he wouldn't talk about it because we would just ridicule him. So I asked him. He kind of gave me the side eye. Like, are you really interested? And I'm like, yeah, tell me. And of course, described this incredible sighting of a classic disc. Lights, colored lights, a dome, treetop level, perfectly silent. He chased it in his car. Really good sighting. He saw it for about 15 minutes. And he had two witnesses with him, his friends, who I knew, Phil and Greg. He's like, call them. You should call them. They'd love to talk to you. They'll verify my story. And I did. And they did. And gave me new details. That opened the door for me. And that's when the walls came crumbling down. And my whole belief
Wow.
system collapsed, and it was bad news as far as I was concerned, because I found out that my sister-in-law had seen UFOs and ETs. Soon-to-be sister-in-law. My other soon-to-be sister-in-law also saw ETs as a young girl. Found out that I had some really good friends who had some close-up sightings. One had missing time. That took both of us a while to unpack, because I didn't quite realize how missing time can be so seamless. But I brought it up at work, and that was kind of the final straw. As I'm talking to the lady whose desk was next to mine, it's like, oh yeah, UFOs. Me and my whole family saw one. It was darting across the sky. I'm like, Diane, this was a helicopter you were seeing.
Yeah.
She, of course, got mad at me. She's like, no, it wasn't a helicopter. It went from one side of the horizon to another in 3 seconds. It turned at right angles. It hovered in place. It was perfectly silent. We watched it for a long time, not quite an hour. And her daughter was there, who I knew. Her daughter would pick her up and drop her off. And she's like, you should talk to my daughter because she's having visitations with these little guys with big eyes, bald heads. I'm like, oh my God. Because this time I'm picking up books. Missing Time by Bud Hopkins, and the Betty Andreasson story, and of course the first book by Travis Walton, the Walton Incident. So I had started to get some books on this subject, and then in walks Dorothy Hudson. I love her. She's so outgoing and very funny and very smart. It's like, UFOs, one followed me home from the library. It's so weird. We left at 9 o'clock. We live 5 minutes away. It followed us home from the library. Her friend Carol, and her mom, Dorothy C. I ended up interviewing all 3 of them because they got home. They jumped up to the second story of the house, looked out the window. This classic flying saucer darted back and forth and took off. And Carol looks at the clock and was like, oh my God, it's 10:15. How is that possible? We left at 9 o'clock. We're missing over an hour.
Whoa.
I told Dorothy, you've been abducted. And she's like, what? I've learned to be a little more subtle now when I interview people. So yeah, I got pushed right into the deep end there, found out there was a cover-up. My whole belief system collapsed. I was upset. It took me a year to sort of just wrap my head around what the heck is going on here. There was a fear-based narrative being pushed by the media that really had me concerned, to say the least. So I just ended up I'm like, you know what? I'm joining MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. It took me about a year to find them, but I did, and I became a field investigator. I took their take-home test. I thought this is going to be easy. It was not. It was super hard. There was no internet back then, so I was going to the library, and I did well in the astronomy section. Photography, I didn't know a lot about photography. My sister was an amateur photographer, so she helped. And I was taking meteorology by a coincidence, so that helped. But ultimately, I did really well, started investigating my own cases, interviewing people formally. My first interview was a lieutenant colonel, of all things, who claimed to have worked next to Project Blue Book. What a disappointment that was. He was, if you'll excuse the term, an a-hole. He was a real, did not like him. He called me an idiot, essentially. Says anyone who believes in UFOs is naive, stupid, and uneducated. I'm like, dude, you're not educated. Because I can prove this subject pretty easily. In a court of law, I could prove it, hands down, even back then. So yeah, I dove in for 10 years, Paul. I interviewed people. I went to conventions. I traveled to UFO hotspots. I wrote articles. I'm on the radio. I got on TV real quick by pure coincidence and put out my first book after 10 years of research, 1996. What was it called? UFO Healings. 100 cases of people healed, because no one was talking about that. And I haven't looked back from there.
Wow. Out of all of and by this time you've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands of witnesses. Is there one that really stands out, or one that really keeps you awake at night? Or is that too many?
It's really hard for me to pick and choose, because I'm like, wow, this was so amazing. I did a whole book on one kind of conglomeration of cases where there was a wave of sightings over my hometown, Topanga Canyon. That kept me up at night. I got a threatening phone call while I was investigating that from some government guy saying, you're barking up the wrong tree. What you're doing is dangerous. You should get out of it. It's not what you think it is. Blah, blah, blah. There was another guy I interviewed who was a Navy medic, and he ended up being taken on board and had a long conversation with these 15-foot tall praying mantis. That was another one, like, wow, I still think about that one. But I'd say my favorite is fairly recent, actually. I was contacted by a lady by the name of Dolly Saffron, who ended up writing the whole book on her case, Symmetry, because it was the most, hands down, Paul, the most extensive case of contact I've ever heard of, ever read about, ever talked to.
Really?
And she had corroborating witnesses, medical evidence of implants and healings and mysterious pregnancies, photographic evidence. I saw the UFO myself. I ended up actually, this is later on, being taken on board. So, I mean, this is insane when I think about it. But yeah, her case is amazing because at age, I mean, she had a contact all her life. But at age 14, she kind of had enough of the missing time, the confusion, and am I crazy, and what's going on? And she had another encounter in her home in Florida near the Everglades, had this craft come down, and she kind of had missing time again. But she started remembering and just sat down and remembered that she was, in fact, taken on board. She threw up the second she was on board there, just from all the traumatic stress of it. But they gave her a tour of the craft. She remembered all her childhood encounters. They asked her what she wanted to do with her life. They took her to Saturn and the moon, and just this incredible encounter. And it just ramped up from then. So yeah, her case is the one that, oh, I won't say keeps me up at night. Well, yeah, I'd say that's actually a fair statement. It did. So yeah, there's a lot to pick from. I mean, there was one lady who I interviewed who was such a good witness. She was so lucid, so intelligent, funny, smart, and she wrote down her case for me. I always tell you, can you give me a little write-up and then I'll interview you? Because it's this way I can kind of, it's an interview technique where I can kind of help confirm a story. But she was out jogging one evening in 2006, well, 4 a.m. She likes to get up that early and go jogging. I don't know how she does it.
I don't either.
I'm not getting out of bed unless I have to, but she was jogging outside of her home in O'Fallon, Illinois in 2006 with her dog. And as she always did, this was a morning thing, and her dog stops right in its path, looks up, and so she looks ahead of her. She was at a T intersection about 100 feet away, a fairly busy street during the day, but not at night. And she sees deers and, raccoons and fox, and it's a pretty rural area. And she saw something else. She first thought it was a man on stilts walking in the middle of the road with extenders on his arms, swinging around like this, and it walks right under the streetlight there. I looked this up on Google. Everything she described was exactly correct. And she said, no, it wasn't a man on stilts. It was a praying mantis, and it was 15 feet tall. And she knows it because she could measure it against the light pole there. And she says it was just took 6-foot strides. She had it in view for maybe 20 seconds or so. Got a real good look at it when it was under the light there, and it had its arms up going like this, and looking down at the ground. It had a giant triangular head, eyes the size of basketballs. The descriptions I hear, only this one's 15 feet tall. It's usually like maybe 9, maybe. And off it went. Now, me, probably I would have turned around and gone home. Yeah. She didn't. She ran after it with her dog. Gets to the T intersection just in time to see this thing disappear into the cornfield. So she runs up and looks. She's not going into the cornfield. I can understand that. But it was gone. And I asked her, I'm like, what the heck? What's around there? She's like, really, there's nothing. It's cornfields. There's a high school, a water tower. She never saw a UFO. She says, there is one thing that might be connected. She says she's 6 miles away as the crow flies from Scott Air Force Base in Illinois.
Okay.
And that did ring a bell for me because I'm like, oh, wait, Scott Air Force Base. Isn't there a case where a UFO flew right over that? They denied it. The radar wasn't on, they said. Air Force bases don't turn off the radar. They just don't do that. So, yeah, that was a good case. That one I think about often. But I could give you 100, Paul.
I know. Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned Scott Air Force Base. I was up in that area this past weekend, and I was thinking about, I don't know if it's exactly in the area, but you remember just a few, or maybe back in the 80s or early 90s, there were a lot of police officers that saw a craft, and they were calling in, or people were calling in from 911, and a lot of the police officers chased this craft across county lines.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking about. Yep.
Yeah, that's an incredible case, and it's
went right over Scott or right nearby it, and they're like, we know nothing about it. Like, sure you don't. Here's 5 police officers in different counties, bunch of people seeing it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's amazing. It's amazing that there's so much that's been documented, and that they think we're stupid. They just really think we're dumb, and just tell them it's temperature inversions or cloud covers or whatever. Tell them all this, and it's just not going away this time. And I think they know that, and it seems like they're scrambling, trying to come up with some other narrative, trying to push something out, or even trying to cause a lot of fear, a lot of panic. And I don't know if it's because of maybe it's a push for the military industrial complex to grow even bigger. I some of the things I've researched, or some of your books that I've read about you and stuff, you don't think these things are to be feared. Is that correct? For the most part?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you added that little clause there. For the most part, I think we should be far, far, far more worried about the nefarious agents here on this planet who are doing things like my labs.
Yes.
And, I don't want to get into all their conspiracies, which are true, but I don't think they have our best interests in mind. And if you look at onboard encounters in particular, because this is where the information is, this dives to the very heart of the extraterrestrial presence on our planet. People being taken on board. You're not going to hear Congress talking about that, are you? Because that's where the answers are. And yes, it is very scary for people, and especially in the beginning. And it's really controversial in some areas because people say, oh, my kids are being taken. And that's like not okay for parents, which is understandable.
Sure.
Contact starts at a very young age for people. So we're looking at children being taken on board at age 4, 5, and 6, and so on. And as adults, a lot of people feel like I don't have control over this. I don't know what's going on. I didn't ask for this. People find themselves taken on board and they're being physically examined. This is the worst I hear. That's the part that really sets people off because they feel like they have no control over what's happening. So people suffer from trauma, honest to God PTSD. So they're coming back from encounters and they've got nightmares and insomnia and fear of intruders and can't sleep unless the lights are on and so forth. But that is the worst of it. Let's get through this hard part first.
Right.
Because what's happening when people are taken on board? Let's take a look at this. Because it was Thomas Bullard, a folklorist, UFO researcher who studied 300 plus cases and came up with the absolute sequence of events that we hear over and over again. And I was amazed when I found his research because it was exactly what I found and really what all researchers are coming up with, which is, people are going to be physically examined. This is why I put out that book on healing cases, because I kept finding so many of these cases. And it's not, a one-off by any means. Every major researcher out there, almost without exception, I won't say everyone, because then someone's going to come up like, well, I never found one. I'm like, you probably did, because Bud Hopkins has them. I had to corner him. He never wrote about it. I cornered him at a convention in San Diego. I'm like, oh, what's up? You've got 6 books out now. You've never mentioned UFO healings. Do you not get them? He's like, oh, yeah. I get them all the time. It's very encouraging. I'm like, okay, well, that's what I thought. David Jacobs, he's a prominent researcher who did some really good work, but it's fear-based, and he doesn't like ETs, but has a case of someone healed of diphtheria and pneumonia and a bunch. They all do. John Mack, Edith Fiore, Yvonne Smith, Barbara Lamb, RD6 Killer Clark, Tim Beckley, Brad Steiger. I could go on. Michael Hesseman, Timothy Good, Jacques Vallée.
Even Travis Walton. I remember him thinking at first, or I remember him telling me a while back, at first he thought he was being abducted for nefarious reasons, but later after he really reassessed everything, he turns out that he thinks they saved his life from, the initial blast. That it was like an accident and they took him on board to save his life, to heal him.
Exactly. So that's the pattern I see so often. What starts out like, oh my God, this is scary. I don't know what's going on. Well, once you start to figure out what's going on, a different story emerges. So what happens at this point is a lot of people are like in straight panic, fear, missing time, don't want to talk about it, don't want to remember, deny, screen memories, and they suppress it. And that's where it stays for a long time for a lot of people. But if you're being taken on board, chances are you're going to be taken on board again. And some people, don't have fear, or most people will get over it at some point. And this is when I started to realize, okay, well, here's what's going on. Because after the exam and the healings, and healings can be anywhere from 20 to 50% or more in terms of this is why you're being taken on board. It's a checkup. It's a opportunity for healing. It's going to the doctor is what it is. Nobody likes going to the doctor. but they're there for your benefit. But then they will give you a consultation. And this is usually starts personal. It's about your personal life. What are you doing with your career? How are your relationships? Where are you living? What is your future going to be like? They're talking about your personal life. And then it will move to more global concepts. So they will give warnings, usually about nuclear proliferation. They will give warnings about pollution, destruction of the environment, perhaps greed and corruption, war and aggression, things that, we're on the wrong pathway. And then they will, if you're okay, if you're not freaking out, they will give you a tour of the craft, full on every room. They will take you down to what we would call the engine room. And they will explain in depth, depending on your interest and level of understanding, how they power these craft or how they fly, which is usually, gravitational magnetic field lines, or, basically harnessing those. Or some people like it was free energy or some magnetism, something along those lines. Then they will take you to the side of the craft, usually. Sometimes the top, an observation deck, they'll turn the wall transparent. And this is what most people will see, is a field of stars. Second most common, the Earth down below. Third most common would be perhaps Saturn or the moon. And beyond that would be just about anything, another planet even. But they will take you up to the control room. This is not uncommon. I've got case after case of this. They will actually, this is how we fly the craft. It's psychically driven. Do you want to sit in the seat? They will let some people actually, take a little joystick or learn how to fly it mentally. So that's not so bad, is it? That's really kind of interesting. They will tell people, we are you, because people always ask, who are you? Where do you come from? They can be a little bit evasive about their exact origins for good reason, I think, depending on who they're talking to, because we're so violent, we're so corrupt, we weaponize everything. But they will basically say something along the lines of, we're related. We're not that different from you. We share a common ancestry. We have the same heritage. What's really interesting, I've heard the same line probably at least almost a dozen times, not quite, but we are you, you are us, we are one. That exact phrase. When I hear it, Dolly Saffron told that to me, and I laughed because I'm like, wow, here we go again. That is incredible. She never read a UFO book. Most contactees don't. They stay away from this stuff. So yeah, I think one of the reasons people are taken on board is to just have the ETs wake us up to our own psychic abilities. So people will come back from an encounter and they're telepathic. Their mediumship skills are blossoming. They start having astral projection. They start having precognition, clairvoyance, hands-on healing, remote viewing, all kinds of stuff. So my point is, I don't think they're here to take over. I don't think there's any good evidence to support that. Yes, it can be scary, and often is, but from what I'm looking at, throwing away any prior belief system, because I've interviewed people who are ultra religious, and they have a real hard time with it. I've interviewed people who are ultra atheistic, very materialistic. They have a real hard time with it as well, equally hard. And almost always a kind of shift towards the middle and become a little bit more what I would call spiritual, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's good news for humanity because they are trying to wake us up to the fact that we're on the wrong path. That, in a nutshell, is their agenda. So how is that bad news? Tell me how that's bad news for anybody.
I don't know. And that was my next question. Why do you think we are being pushed a fear narrative? I mean, what somebody's trying to gain something, and I don't know who it is or why they would want to steer us away from that, the good, positive message. But what are your thoughts on the fear-based narratives, or why are they doing it?
Well, this is the military-industrial complex at its best. This is our tax dollars at work. Our honorable vice president, I'm sure, is a wonderful person, but put forth the idea that they're demonic. And that one really set me off because you can see the books behind me. I've got a whole shelf on just demonic hauntings and did my own research firsthand. Went to demonic haunted places, talked to the people. It's a different thing. It's not, demons don't heal people. They don't give warnings about nuclear aggression. They don't fly around in spaceships. It's ridiculous. I've got 10 solid reasons why it's not demonic. But they're pushing this fear-based narrative. They push fear on everything. Look at the news. You're gonna die tomorrow. Sitting is dangerous. Sitting could kill you. That was an actual news story. I'm not kidding. So there is a fear narrative that's being put forth on humanity by what I believe to be what we would call the cabal. You can call them what you want, the one percenters, Illuminati, I've heard, but a group of people who have an enormous amount of money and power that's mind-bogglingly huge. It's not, what's the guy who buying all the farms and stuff, the computer guy?
Bill Gates?
Bill Gates. Yeah, he's got a lot of money, but no, not compared to these guys. You might be one of their stooges. I don't know. This is not really my area of expertise. I'm focusing on the contactees mostly, but I think they're pushing a fear narrative to basically push us off the UFO story and the knowledge that ETs are out there living without money, without a federalized government, without crime. They've cured disease. This is something that we could do, but are we going to? Not unless we can shake off these folks who are trying to basically poison us. Look at our food supply.
Right, for sure.
We could get into a whole show on just the awful things these folks have done. And I'm not going to, don't like to call it government, because government is the legislature, right? It's the executive branch, it's the judicial branch. That's not who's doing this. It's deeper. It's the three-letter agencies, the intelligence, Pentagon. It's the highest levels of the military. And again, you have to be careful there, because I think some of the military folks are like out of their minds trying to deal with this, because they're not doing it. It's quasi-military, but it's really the companies. I think it's probably, in years I can track down, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but I think it's the energy industries. I think it's the pharmaceutical industry.
100%.
These folks, the insurance and banking industry, the aeronautical industry are the ones who are reverse engineering this stuff. It's all privatized. You can't track it with the Freedom of Information Act. So we really, Congress has oversight over the budget, and we know that they're spending $300 on a washer and $2,000 on a hammer. So that's something that we do have a tool to sort of fight these guys. There's my cat.
Hey, now war has always been big business. Division is big business. Control is big business. And that's exactly what they've done it for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they're continuing to do it. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Those are the ones that I fear. Seriously.
Yeah.
Look at all the scientists that got bumped off.
Yes.
UFO research alone can be a little bit of a dangerous pursuit if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And there's the whole MyLab phenomena is bone chilling.
Yeah, I've been contacted recently. I live I live in between Nashville and Huntsville. Space Rocket Center, Rocket City, Werner von Braun, that whole thing. And I got to be careful. I've been contacted by some people that want to talk to me or show me things. And I'm a little hesitant, a little nervous to meet and do this, because they actually have some very intriguing stories, and they claim to know where things are. And I don't know if I should, but I'm, all because the people are going missing. So it's, but
I can tell you that contactees I've interviewed are surveilled 100%. I've seen it. I saw it with Dolly Saffron. I was there. I went to a convention with her, and I'm like, Dolly, we're being followed. We had an Airbnb, which was, some ways off from the hotel where the convention was. UFO MegaCon, I think it was. And then I turned off the main street, and I'm like, why are that car's following me? And then I turned another. I'm like, it's still following me. And that's when I'm like, Dolly, I think we're being followed. I had 5 more turns. Pulled in. They followed us the whole way. Just your normal looking car. I pulled into the driveway. We're getting out. And this darn car, these guys are brazen. Parked in front of the driveway. Blocked the driveway. We couldn't get in or out. I'm like, oh my God. And looked at us, kind of glared at us. I'm like, oh my. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You're good. Maybe they're calling you to tell you to stop talking. But yeah, I was thinking pretty much what do you think this whole phenomena is, or where are they coming from? Do you have any ideas on that? Or, I tend to think they may be either from another place, or they're coming from the ocean, or they went to the ocean to hide, or they literally have they always been here and they're from the oceans in general?
Yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily in undersea bases. I seriously considered that idea for some time.
Okay.
But after talking to a lot of contactees, I'm like, no, they don't really need to do that. I think there are USOs in large
Right.
numbers and have been for a very long time. And there's a lot of good reporting on that. I did a whole study of USO activity off the Southern California coast and got well
Right.
over 100 cases, which is really interesting. But I think we're dealing with extraterrestrials from other planets. This is my assessment based on really digging down and looking at all the evidence objectively. Because people will say, well, they're time travelers from the future. Like, that's kind of an interesting idea. Let's check that out. I scoured the books. I found 3 or 4 cases that mention that directly. Not super credible, though. But, well, I don't know. I'll put that on the back burner because you've got 100 cases easy, 200 where people have been taken to other planets. And almost always these UFOs aren't like going into the ground, or they're going up and turning tiny little dots in the sky, and off they're going straight up. Some people say, well, they're interdimensional. I'm like, well, that's another interesting idea, isn't it? Because they're turning at right angles. There's some really kind of high strangeness aspects to a lot of these encounters. But the more I studied this, I'm like, well, we're kind of interdimensional ourselves. We survive death. We have an astral body. If you look into the accounts of yogis and enlightened masters on this planet, they're doing things like levitating and turning invisible and walking through walls and all kinds of stuff. I studied that. I wrote a book called Human Levitation. It's 100% true. So we're interdimensional, and yeah, they are too. That doesn't preclude you from being extraterrestrial, a physical being. Another theory that's popular, we already talked about, demonic. I'm just going to discard that because that's purely faith-based thinking, not based on any actual evidence. Some people will tell me, well, like you call on Jesus and they'll disappear. Well, you know what? If I came up to you and I was trying to examine you to cure you of a problem, and you started screaming at me, in the name of Jesus, leave, in the name of Jesus, leave, and started throwing holy water on me, I'm going to respect you and leave. So I don't think that, it's the power of Jesus doing it. Because I do know cases where people are like, had enough, I am not dealing with this, go away. And the ETs will respect that. Often they will come back at some point to see if you're still feeling that way. But no, I don't think they're demonic. And I've got a bunch of reasons why, because it doesn't explain the crash retrieval reports.
Right.
It doesn't explain why the ETs are warning us and helping us. It doesn't explain the missing pregnancies. It doesn't explain where people are when they're supposed to be in their room and they're not. And then there's the second most popular theory, which has gained a lot of traction, and I hate it. I really do. And I blame, John Keel for putting this forth.
I was going to ask you about John Keel next.
And I don't want to get in trouble because he's done great work. I love his books, I should say. And Jacques Vallée, what a hero. We would not be here today without the work that he's done. But John Keel, and, a few others, Jerome Clark, and quite a few others are putting forth this speculative theory that what we're looking at is an intelligence that wears different masks, that can manifest as anything. And it's a very vague theory. It's incredibly anthropocentric because it's basically saying UFO phenomena is about us because of us. We know that kind of theory is not true because we're not the center of the universe. And I think the UFO phenomena exists whether we do or not, because people will find landing traces in the woods, and they never saw a UFO. There's just this big circle of burned grass. But my point is, this theory, Jacques Vallée has 5 main reasons to put this forth. And one is that there's too many encounters for this to be a study of our planet. Well, first of all, too many encounters? Well, what? How is that? How can you draw any conclusion from the number of encounters that there are, considering how many stars there are out there? And who says their only agenda is studying this planet? They could be tourists. They are, some of them. I'm pretty darn sure some are tourists. Sometimes they're picking up people. Sometimes they're picking plants and flowers or animals. And sometimes they're studying earthquake faults. Sometimes they're studying our technology. There's all kinds of reasons they're here. Another reason he said is, this can't be what it looks like because there's no way, scientifically impossible, that they would look like us. Hold on a second. Have you been to other planets? How can you say that? You don't know. And second of all, we have not 10,000 reports. We have closer to 100,000 reports of humanoids. They do look like us. So to throw this away and say, well, it's a mask, is incredibly speculative and not scientific thinking. It's just not. And if you look to the actual information coming from these reports, the ETs have explained this. We share a common heritage. For Pete's sake, some look just like us. Absolutely human. But we're looking at the humanoid form as the universal template. And he's got some other reasons. It's too bizarre. It's no surprise to me that we don't understand technology that is a million years ahead of our own. That doesn't surprise me at all. I think his best argument was the little people throughout history, fairies, gnomes, dwarves, so forth, which have incredible similarities to UFO count, but striking differences, real striking differences. Because often they're smoking a pipe and they've got their little hat and they've got their vest on and their boots and they're dancing around, and it's different. They're not grays. They don't look like grays. So I don't think that those are ET either. I think there's little people. I did a whole study of it. I was shocked to find this is still going on. This is not relegated to the 1800s or 1700s or the Middle Ages. There's little people, and every culture talks about them.
Yeah, they sure
do.
And
Bigfoot too. So I think we're dealing with a lot of different things, and researchers are mistakenly conflating all of it into one little basket in the attempts to label it and make it easy. But this idea of an intelligence, I'm sorry I'm going off on this because
no, you're fine.
Mad. But the idea that there's one intelligence is, okay, explain that to me. Explain the mechanics of how something can create a metallic ship that glassifies sand 3,000, does take 3,000, 5,000 degrees to do that. Press railroad ties into the ground so that we know it's 3,000 pounds. Where are people when they're being taken on board? What about these implants that have been removed out of people's bodies? What about the reverse engineering? And Jacques Vallée himself has written books on UFO crash retrievals. So if there is a craft and there are bodies, well, all bets are off. It's not some weird, vague intelligence that's matching our culture. I think the problem is we have a tendency to view reality through the lens of our own beliefs. And so if Rowan's called them flying shields, well, that's because that's all they knew, shields.
Right.
In terms of what's metallic and flying around out there. So a lot of this stuff was interpreted through the lens of religion. So it doesn't surprise me that there's still this demonic idea lingering. But I think what we're dealing with is several different intelligences on our planet. Dolphins and cetaceans, certainly. Bigfoot, little people, some interdimensional entities like jinns and demonic spirits and things like this, and ETs, people like us, because we're on a planet. We know we exist. To say that everything out there is demonic and here on Earth we're good. That's ridiculous. There's got to be other people like us. To think that we're alone in the universe is not only arrogant, it's just fuzzy thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I totally 100% agree. You were talking about all of this stuff, or if it was just one thing, or if they are coming from other worlds, whatever. I mean, if you could sit down with whoever or whatever is behind this whole phenomenon, and they tell you they'll give you one answer, a completely honest answer, what would you ask them? Or what would be your number one question for them?
Only one. Paul, you're limiting me. Fine.
Yeah,
all right.
That makes it interesting.
I would probably ask about human origins, because there's a lot of speculation we evolved from primates. I don't know about that. There's some real problems with that theory. And creationism is not a whole lot better. It's actually a little worse. So that would be my question. And they've already basically said, to some extent, that we've been around forever, that we have previous iterations on this planet, that catastrophes come and go, existential crises come and go. They scoop us off. They put us in a safe place. They bring us back. Yeah, I have a lot of questions about all of human history.
Yeah,
that would be one I'd really like to know about.
Yeah, I kind of find Graham Hancock fascinating. A lot of his thoughts or theories on prehistory stuff and a lot of the things. But I know a lot of people don't like him. But he's got his own theories and own take on a lot of stuff that we may have been more technologically advanced than we think we were, it's amazing that we have pyramids all over the entire world. We have some of the same things, and everybody has the same origin story, or maybe they came from the stars. Everybody says we came from the stars, or they came here, they taught us this, they taught us that. So I'm the same I'm in the same boat with you. I would have 100,000 questions about human history.
Yeah. Someone once told me, look up the Great Pyramid, the Pyramid of Giza. Did you know that its declination in, at latitude and longitude is at the speed of light? I'm like, what are you talking about? It is. It absolutely is. I had to look it up.
Really?
And if you look at the mathematics, seriously, there's that are encoded into pyramids all over the world, and some of these megaliths, 100%. So kudos to Graham Hancock, and frankly, kudos to John Keel and Jacques Vallée and anyone who enters this field where they're trying to get to the truth of human history and the extraterrestrial presence, because you're swimming upstream. What Galileo was it who was burned at the stake for telling the truth, what we now know, we all accept. So it's a tough row to hoe if you're in this field. And
yeah, you and I would be, they would knock down the doors tonight on you and me, the way we've been talking. They would take us right out to the stake.
Yeah, it's funny because I talked to Michael Cremo firsthand. He wrote a book called Forbidden Archaeology. I was doing anthropology, as I mentioned, in college. And I'm like, well, gosh, this is frustrating, because each year they would change their story. They're like, modern humans, they're 40,000. No, they're 50,000. No, they're 100,000. I'm like, well, wait a second. You don't know, do you? And I started doing my research, and I found his book. And he aligns with Graham Hancock in that there were previous iterations that were technologically advanced. 100%. We still can't build some of the things that these megaliths are. We can't do that. There's no way. So
yeah,
there's no doubt in my mind, and the science shows this. This is not speculation. There were previous iterations of advanced civilizations. Because I found, jewelry and tools that they are predating to like millions of years old. There's no way that we made those. I don't have the exact date. Obviously, I'm not an archaeologist, but he is, and he convinced me.
Yeah. I really like his work. Very thought-provoking, and some people, you just can't get them to open their mind enough to look into it, and they're afraid of their whole paradigm being shifted.
Which I get. Mine was, and boy, it was painful.
Yeah.
I've tried to debate some of the demonologists about this, and it's like talking to a flat earther. You cannot talk to them.
Right.
You're wasting your time. They've dug in. It's an idée fixée, as they say in France. They're wedded to it. So it's like, have fun, but I think you're wrong.
Yeah. And I think the best thing that anyone of science can do is just to be open to being wrong, or anybody, any of us, just be open, listen to what possibly could be.
Yeah. Science becomes a closed system, because if it doesn't fit the current paradigm, it bounces off like a piece of straw against armor. You can't get in. And so science becomes this closed system that doesn't advance until you have someone who's true, like Louis Pasteur. They called him an idiot. Like, what? Right. What germs? You're crazy. Little germs don't cause sickness. He was, of course, not only right, he ended up saving millions of lives, and they ridiculed him to death. I just saw a movie on it, last year, so I'm like, still kind of like, wow, he's a hero. Yeah. Very cool. And that's science. So it is really hard to move this subject forward, because it's got all kinds of stuff in it, like levitation and telepathy, and there's this weird Bigfoot connection in some cases, and it's a big horse pill to swallow for people who are mechanistic in their thinking, a materialist.
It is. And I don't even try to talk to them I just let them do their talk, and I just say okay. But I don't even try to debate anymore. It's just there's some you'll never reach, there's some you'll never get to, and that's fine.
Yeah. You know what my favorite quote, or my least favorite I should say, is someone will say, picture or it didn't happen, photograph or it didn't happen. Yeah. I'm like, you idiot. And here's my analogy. Say I'm walking through the forest and I see a giant bear, and it almost attacks me. I come running out of the forest and I meet this guy. I'm like, be careful. There's a bear. He's like, photo or it didn't happen. You go on the trail. Of course, he gets eaten by the bear, and I have sympathy, obviously. But just saying that, photo or it didn't happen is the worst kind of thinking you could possibly put forth.
It is.
Observation is the foundation of science.
Sure. And what's bad nowadays is people send me pictures, photos all the time, and you see it too. I'm sure they send it to you as well. I can't believe anything anymore with the advancement of AI and everything. I just don't believe or trust anything I see anymore. I'm going to have to see it for my own eyes, or someone that I really know and trust are going to, when they tell me, I will believe them. But other than that, I mean, I can't trust anything I see anymore.
Yeah. And, I got involved in this field in the late 1980s. And even then I was suspicious because they had things like Photoshop, and trickery wasn't an unheard of thing. I like the older photographs because of that. But now if someone sends a photograph or we hear about it on TV, unless someone's, first of all, willing to put their name behind it, and if it's got multiple witnesses at least, I like the Dome of the Rock footage because there was 5 different witnesses who saw this, and they came forth, and I don't think it's fake. Or the Combergas turkey footage, 2007, 8, and 9. Dr. Roger Lear was there. That was very widely viewed. It's funny, people are trying to debunk it as a cruise, a cruise ship, where just the bridge is visible. It's like, dudes, this was filmed during the day where you can see it in the sky. You're picking, the cherry picking and shoe fitting in this field is off the charts. So, and it's amazing. I don't trust most footage. You can't.
You can't. And it's sad. It's sad that we've come to that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
I'm crying about it. It's very sad.
Yeah. Well, what do you have on the horizon? What's coming up for Preston Dennett?
I am working on a sequel to my book, Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure, which was, again, about Dolly Saffron and her encounters, because the first one was really just skimming the surface. She has had so many interactions. So we're going to dive deep in that and kind of try to pull out some of what the ETs have taught her in terms of other dimensions and the mysteries on our planet, because she's got a unique perspective. I'm putting together another book about my own out-of-body experiences. I've had a lot of that. I got pretty good at it, and putting a whole other book about that. I've got another book about UFOs, one about the supernatural. I got rights to some of my older books back. I'm super excited. Going to update those and put them out. Keeping busy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about your out-of-body experiences. Was that something that happened by happens? Did it just happen one night or one day and you just kind of dug into it? Or is that something you seeked out to try and figure out how to do this?
Yeah, a little bit of both, but more I sought it out because my mom passed away very suddenly when I was 19 years old, and I saw her spirit. I thought I was hallucinating. I've never taken hallucinogenics. I've never really hallucinated. So that was like, what the heck? I now, in hindsight, realized, I saw her spirit. But then I started dreaming about her coming into my room and saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. I was awake, I thought, but I wasn't. She would leave, and then I would wake up, and I thought, oh my God, that felt like her. And she came over and over to the point where I'm like, well, I'm at a crossroads here. This feels like her. I'm almost sure this is her, but there's no such thing as life after death. So am I going crazy, or what's going on here? So I started buying all these books on dreams, which weren't really that good. I started interviewing everybody about dreams. I wrote down every dream I ever had, interviewed everyone about their dreams, and ended up throwing away all these dream books because they don't know what dreams are. Nobody knew what dreams are. So I ended up becoming an expert on dreams. I have to some extent, but I'm going to do that as well because I've dug deep into that. And came across Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body.
Yep.
And I thought, oh my God, this guy, wow. He was clearly honest and gave exercises on how to do it. And they were really kind of meandering and complicated. But I'm like, well, I'm going to try. And found a few other books and really meditated. And it took me 7 weeks of meditation for at least an hour a day, really 2 or 3, because I needed to know. I was so devastated about the loss of my mom, and had my first OBE one day, just kind of laid down in bed and felt what they call the vibratory state. And Robert Monroe described it as being a mild electric shock. And I didn't think it was mild at all. I thought I was being electrocuted.
Right.
And I didn't even recognize it for what it was. So I'm like, oh, I laid down. I must have stuck my finger in the light socket because I'm about to die. And I was in sheer panic when I popped out of my body and I flew across the room out of control across the hallway and into the bathroom and looked into the mirror. And I'm like, oh my God, there's nobody there. I am out of body. I'm like, oh my God, it's true. There is life after that. In 1 second, my whole world changed. And I got pulled right back in, Did it again the next weekend, same thing. Woke up the next week already out of body. Thought I had died. That was terrifying. Dove back in and I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting a handle on this. And I started really meditating for real. And it took me a year to stay out more than a few seconds or up to a minute because I get so excited. Finally, I'm like, okay, I'm out. Oh my God. And I'm like, finally just relaxed. And I'm like, then I had to learn how to see because everything was foggy and distorted and I couldn't move. I'm flying around, flapping my arms. It was a learning curve because there was just a few books on this and none were really good for beginners. But I learned how to walk through the walls and that was very cool. I learned how to fly. I kept at it.
Yeah.
Really kept at it and got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can go to my friend's house now. I can start to verify that this is real, go to a place that I haven't been to before, and then go there physically. My mom came down once. I'm like, oh my God, Mom. And finally, she took me to the other side. And I saw what you'd call the heavenly realms. I'm not religious, really. My brothers were religious. There's 6 kids in our family. The 3 brothers, they were raised, going to church. Us 3 little ones, they called us. No, my parents rebelled against religion. So I didn't have that. But those were heavenly realms for sure. Because they were glowing with light and everything sparkles and it's super green and the flowers. I mean, I can't describe the beauty of it, but you can fly around. She took me on a tour of it and I ended up doing this over and over and over again and got really good at it. So now I've learned about my past lives. I went to what we call the Akashic Library, a healing temple, met enlightened masters, all the stuff you can do. It drives me crazy when I think about it because I don't know why everyone's not doing this. So I've kind of shifted my focus to teaching people. I've got a little guide I give people. You can email me, prestonufo@gmail.com. It's a 2-page simplified guide that will allow you to do this because it's a natural human talent. It's as safe as sleeping. Anyone can do it. All it is a matter of applied knowledge. The only thing stopping people, there's 4 things. Laziness, let me see if I can get this right. Laziness, fear, skepticism, and ignorance. Those are the 4 main obstacles. Because people, I give them the guide, they don't do it. It's not going to work if you don't do it. And if you're scared out of your mind, that's going to be an obstacle. And if you don't know the steps, well, you're never going to be able to do it because you don't know about it. And if you think, nah, I can't do it, such things don't exist. Well, that's another obstacle because you're not even going to go there. Oh, it's only yogis that can do this. Here's the truth. Everyone's already doing it every night. You're just not remembering it. So there's little tricks. Yeah, but it's so much fun. I can't tell you. It's so much fun.
I may have to get your pamphlet, give it a whirl and see.
Yeah, it's worth it. Yeah, it took me 7 weeks. I've given it to people and they did it on the first night. I'm so jealous. I'm like, What the heck? And, I work with people because some people, it's like, it's been a year. And I'm like, well, let's figure out what you're doing wrong. Because often people are not relaxing. They're just not relaxing enough. Or they're still afraid. If part of you is afraid, you're going to hold yourself back. There are all kinds of things that people self-sabotage themselves with. And so that's basically, I work with a lot of people to try to get them to do it. And some people just hearing about it. I've taught seminars. One person came to my seminar and like, I did it. I'm like, you haven't even attended the seminar. She's like, no, I just read about it. And you were right. Everything you said in the little, the opening of the presentation. I'm like, you can do this. It's a matter of relaxation, visualizations. And she did it and didn't even really need to come to the seminar. It was very cool.
Well, have you ever encountered like ETs or
Yes.
is any of that connected?
I did once. I've got a bucket list of things I want to do. And I'm still trying to, not quite at will, I can do this. Where I lay down and I'm like, let's go. Sort of I can. If I lay down and I really, really want to do it and I spend like 3 hours, I'm sure I could. But I do it 4 or 5 times a month on a good month. And yeah, once I popped out and I'm like, let's go to the other side because that's where all the fun is. You can fly around and go to Paris or whatever, but the natural habitat of your astral body is the astral realms. So I'm going to the other side and you hit this barrier that's kind of the veil between the worlds, right? And sometimes it's boom, I'm there. And other times I'm going through this foggy realm that's kind of hard to describe, but very foggy and sort of amorphous. And I'm going through that and I'm like, what's that? What the heck is that up ahead? It was these 2 dark spots. but that almost looks like eyeballs. And I'm zooming up pretty fast. And yeah, it was eyeballs, all right. It was a gray. And
Wow.
it was a cute little thing, real short and kind of almost goofy in a way. Like it just kind of gave me an elf-like energy. And but it surprised me real bad because I kept looking at it, kept looking at it. I'm like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And then I'm right next to it. And I'm like, it's a gray. Oh my God. And it watched me go by. And now I regret not like stopping and like, dude, what's up?
Yeah.
But you know, when you see something like that the first time, you're like, oh my God. So yeah, that was pretty much the only real time. I had one big one where I was on board a UFO out of body, flying over my hometown and looking down through the transparent bottom of the craft. But it was a very early one, and I don't have a lot of memories of it. But yeah, that's really the only time I've ever explored. Like, let's go see ET. I'll have to do that again. But there's so many things to do.
Yeah. It sounds intriguing. I think I may have always been a little fearful of it, but I don't know.
Well, don't be, because where are you going to go when you die? To heaven, what you call heaven, even the garden realms.
I hope so.
So almost everybody will. There are earthbound souls, and I've dealt a lot with that as well. But almost always they're like super depressed, or they're super angry, or they're absolutely addicted, or they're bound to their house, or they've got some reason that they're not okay. And usually I can talk to them. I'm like, hey, it's funny because I've done this a lot, and I've learned. I'm like, okay, what's your name? How did you die? It's crazy because this keeps happening to me. Like one time I came out and I see this little boy. He's like 8 years old, you know, a cute little guy. I'm like, hi, what's your name? And he says, my name is Buster, and I was mauled by a bull. And he was like all proud, and I'm like, oh my heart. I'm like, oh my God, because he's this cute little kid. And whenever you get so emotional, you get pulled right back in. But normally I'll come to a person, I'm like, what's your name? And they'll tell me, I'm like, do you realize you're dead? And I'm like, yeah. How did you die? One guy told me they murdered me with poison candy. He was angry. I'm like, wow. Oh my God. I'm like, do you want to go to the other side? You know, I can help you. Because once you know where it is, it's easy to go. You just kind of intend. And he's like, okay. And I took him by the hand and off we went. And it was great.
Wow.
One time I came out and there's this lady there, or it's two ladies, and one with dark hair and the other kind of brown. And I'm like, hi, what's your name? And she looked at me and she was completely dazed. And her friend says she doesn't know her name, but her name is Julie, and gave me an unusual last name that starts with E. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is a name. I'm going to look this up when I'm back in my body. And I'm like, what happened? And she said, they overdosed me and left me in the gutter to die. I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. Do you need some help? I can help cross you over. And she woke up, the one who was kind of in a daze, and realized who she was at this point. And I'm like, I can help you. And her friend's like, no, I got it from here. I'll take her. Thanks very much. And off they went. I'm like, wow, that was different. But I looked her up and I found her. I'm like, oh my God, she died like a year earlier or something. And I never did find Buster. One guy, he's like, my name is Thoreau Dean. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. I didn't even know Thoreau was a name. I never did find him. But man, oh man, that was interesting because you just never know what to expect.
Is that something you typically run into when you get out there? Do you just start running into spirits?
Yes. And I think this is something that happens to a lot of people who start to get good at this. One time I got very curious about the lower realms and, what we would call the hellish realms. And yeah, there's really low places which are completely dark and people are miserable and they're screaming or they're crying and they won't even look at you. You can't get their attention. They don't want help. They're that self-involved.
Wow.
But there's a level above that, which is very urban, kind of like LA on a bad day. Lots of shadows, lots of dark energy. And then there's a level above that, which is like a mall. I don't know how else to describe it. It's so funny. I was looking it up on Reddit. Does anyone run into Mall World where you have dreams in Mall World? I'm like, oh my God. They're describing exactly this realm that people go to when they die where they're not quite ready to cross over. I don't know if this is purgatory or whatever, but it's this giant mall that's kind of dirty and shabby and people are hanging out in alcoves and tables. And
wow.
I'll go there and I'm like, are you dead? Oh yeah, I'm dead. How did you die? Blah, blah, blah. Once stupid me, I'm like, are you dead? There's this table of old ladies, because they don't regress there. Normally, when you go to the heavenly realms, everyone's 25 or 20. They look good. Here,
Wow.
you're whatever age you were when you died. There was a little kid there. I'm like, are you dead? He's like, oh yeah, all of us here are. And I went up to this table of old ladies. There's a lot of people there. I'm like, are you all dead? And they always look at me like I'm a complete idiot. I'm like, yes, of course we are. And stupid man says, well, I'm not. Kind of like, every head turned and swiveled and looked at me. Oh, I got the goosebumps. I'm like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But here, real quick, one more story about this, because I love this. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm in this crowded place. I'm trying to talk to people. I'm like, they don't want to talk because they're like mad and whatever. They're distracted. But I see this big, tall black guy. I'm like, he looks like he's got an aura of light around him. You start to be able to read people intuitively, and you just know things because everything's telepathic to a certain extent when you're out there. This guy just didn't look like he belonged there. Big guy. I mean, he must have been 6'5". I'm 5'9" or 5'10", really. But I walked up to him. He's looking at me. I'm like, hey, dude, what's up? How you doing? He's looked a little dazed. He's like, I'm all right. And he's kind of looking around. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm like, you can go to a higher realm, the heavenly realms. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I can take you there. It's not a problem. I know where it is. I can do it pretty easily. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, all you have to do is take my hand. He gave me the side eye because I was like, you want to take my hand? What? I'm like, it's not that way. I just want to take your hand and I'll get you to the other side. And it took some convincing because he was kind of a macho guy.
Sure.
I'm like, dude, just, take my hand and I will show you. And finally I convinced him, and I just, get a hold of the person's hand or their arm or whatever. And I take off and fly upwards and intend to go there. And we broke through this barrier and all the sparkles of light. There's this weird divine light on the other side that's just embraces you with love in a way that's, you couldn't be in a bad mood if you wanted to. You really couldn't. It's absolute nirvana almost. And as always happens, I can never track them. He broke free and off he went. I never know where these people go, which is a thing apparently, because I've read that in other books. That's what happened. I'm like, all these guys are rescuing people. I want to try that. I'd read something, I'm like, I want to try that too. And I remember my first rescue was this little girl who had been horribly assaulted, if you know what I mean, and murdered. And I'm like, here, take my hand, and I'll take you to the other side. And she's like, no. And I'm like, would you like to fly? Because that sometimes works. And I'm like, oh, you can fly, She's like, who is this guy? She's looking at me like I'm the enemy, which I understand. Finally, I told her, would you like to see your mom? Because I had a feeling that this girl was been there for a long time, years, decades. And that made her face lit up. Such a cute little girl. She reminded me of Heather O'Rourke in Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Very close to what she looked like. And I took her hand and off we went. And as usual, I lost track of her once we hit the heavenly realms.
Wow.
But yeah, almost.
Wow.
For sure, if you start getting good at this, you're going to start doing that because it's a problem. There's a lot of earthbound souls.
My goodness. Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't know we'd go there, but that's a great, but no, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to get you back on here. We can go a whole nother different rabbit hole, maybe go even deeper into the more cover-ups and the pharmaceuticals and the, everything that they're doing to us. I would love to pick your brain on that. But no, thank you so much for coming on, for real. And tell everybody how they could get in touch with you or find you if they needed to.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show, Paul. I appreciate it. I think these are really important subjects.
Very.
You can find my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I have a website. If you type my name in, it should bring you there. The actual address is prestondennett.weebly.com. What else? I've got a YouTube channel where I put out my research on my books and about humanoids and onboard encounters and the whole thing. Got my own podcast each Monday evening, The Lightgate, 8 to 10, United Paranormal Radio Network. I co-host that with Dolly Saffron, Contact D. I'm on the other social media platforms, pretty easy to find, and I try to be responsive because a lot of people do reach out. So I'm typically a week behind on my emails because I'm getting over 100 a day.
Wow.
So it's getting to be a lot of work, and it's becoming a problem, but I'm still plugging away at it.
All right. Well, I definitely enjoy your work. and I appreciate everything that you do. And I will have all your links on the, my site on the podcast. And I think it's going to probably drop in a day or two, but I really appreciate you. And we will talk very soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you. And guys, just hang out just for a few minutes. I'm going to tell, my people where they can find me if they already don't know, but I am the Mysterious Huntsman. You can find me on all the social media platforms, most major podcast platforms as well. And it's the Mysterious Huntsman, or you can check out my website, themysterioushuntman.com. But yeah, Preston, thank you. If you ever need, another helper or boots on the ground, I don't think I'm that far away from you at this point, but I would love to help you do some research. If you ever need a ex-law enforcement, PI, musician, to come down and do something. So, but
sounds like a great combination. Yeah.
I've tried all. I've worn many different hats, but no, man. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great week. And we will talk very soon.
Very good. Thanks very much.
All right.